Jo, welcome to the 20-something podcast.
Thank you, nice to be here.
So Jo Jennings is a two-time Olympian representing Team GB in the women's high jump. Jo competed in both the Seoul and Barcelona Olympics and was just 18 years old at her first Olympic Games. Jo is also a Commonwealth silver medalist representing England at the 1998 Games in Kuala Lumpur. Her professional career spanned over 15 years, a huge achievement for an athlete, and she achieved a PB of jumping 1.94 metres. When I was doing some research for this episode, I was looking at how many people are Olympians, and I was blown away to see that only 0.001% of the population are Olympians, or 1 in 500,000 people, which is crazy. I thought it'd be more than that for some reason, but I think that just makes it extra special. So I feel super honoured to have you on today. Obviously, the Olympics are around the corner, so I thought it'd be an incredible time to get you on. And I know when we've spoken offline, you said that it was such a special time for you and a bit of a time to reminisce about your experiences. So thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thank you. Like I said, it's certainly the right time to come.
Yeah, and incredible achievements being an Olympian and everything that you've achieved. So with all of my guests, I just like to go back to the beginning a little bit. And I know your 20s was the majority of your career as an athlete. So if you could just take us back to the beginning and talk us through your 20s and kind of your journey to being an athlete.
Yeah, sure. My 20s was exactly what you said. It sort of spanned my senior career, I guess, as an athlete. I had my first international when I was 15, represented England, and that was a senior international. I competed at Crystal Palace, which was like the home of athletics, which was a massive deal for me because my interest in athletics, I think, started, I was a sporty kid, but my interest was sparked really from my parents taking me to athletics. Our old neighbour was one of the sponsors of athletics back in the day, and I used to remember going and watching all of the amazing athletes sort of in the late 70s. But I mean, it probably sparked something in me. So to compete as a 15-year-old in my first international was pretty cool. But yeah, my 20s, relevant for this conversation, was actually my 90th. I went to Seoul when I was 18, and my 19th birthday, I was at the holding camp in Japan before we went out to Seoul for the Olympics. And that was a bit of a surprise going to that one. I just happened to sort of time my year really well. It was my last year as a junior, an under-20 athlete, and I managed to just peak at the right time. And I mean, we've spoken a couple of times before about that sort of being a bit of a surprise, and it's all been a bit of a whirlwind, that whole experience of being selected and then going and then coming back, and then suddenly all of the sort of craziness that surrounds the Olympics. I mean, it's so much more now, but it was even then, to be able to say I'd gone to my first Olympics. But yeah, that was an amazing experience. But then managed to go 4 years later to Barcelona as well, with a university career in the middle. Managed to get a degree in the middle there, and despite living a student life for a couple of years and trying to sort of conform to a student life rather than an Olympian's life, I guess had a couple of years where I was less focused on athletics, but came out with my degree and then put myself back into it, and then it sort of culminated on my 29th birthday, so exactly 10 years later, as you say, in Kuala Lumpur, where I won a silver medal. So it was a long career, and that's probably what I'm most proud of. The two Olympics, the Commonwealth silver, but the length of time, and probably a testament to sort of my dogged determination, really, to sort of keep going and sort of survive a few injuries and things, and go that long in my career, really.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we'll dive into that a bit later on as well, with how long your career was. And I know that you overcame injury and different things like that because it was such a long career. But just going back a little bit, what was that feeling of when you were 18 years old and you managed to qualify for the Olympics, and what happened from that moment? Like, talk us through. Do you then just get taken off of Team GB, or how does that happen? Yeah,
it was a bit of a whirlwind. Like I said, my main focus that year was the World Junior Championships, which were in Canada, and I'd had a few issues with not really injury so much as my form. It just wasn't sort of coming together, and then I did manage to get selected for the World Junior Championships, and it all clicked at the right time. So, you know, it sort of, I had 3 or 4 good competitions that year. Everyone thought I had an amazing year because I came 4th in the World Junior Championships. And then I went to the Olympics and I actually broke the British junior record there. So I jumped the best I'd ever jumped in Canada to came 4th. Almost came home with that was the Olympic qualifying standard. I'm going to do the trials, which was like the national senior champs the following week. I'd only been off the plane from Canada about 4 days. And I kind of just went, and I was still buzzing from getting 4th at the World Juniors because that was my focus. And I actually remember a few journalists sort of said to me before, because I was obviously sort of a good junior and I was coming up, and people were saying, what about Seoul? And I was like, no, you know, it's far too early. I'll be looking for Barcelona. Then suddenly, you know, it just clicked. I came home and I finished 2nd at the trials. I'd done the standard, which meant I was on the plane. And then it was like, honestly, a whirlwind of sort of inoculations, going and picking up my kit from London, you know, going down on the train on my own from London. And I was living in Suffolk at the time, and it was just, I hadn't been to London many times. And now I live in London. But, you know, it was just such a mad experience. And suddenly everyone wanted to speak to me, you know, when I came back, because I achieved, you know, a British junior record, and I was the 2nd youngest member of the athletics team. There was a lot of attention, and I liked it, but it wasn't like nowadays where you have sort of training for media training and things to hopefully not say the right thing or the wrong thing. And, you know, but far more attention now. So it's really important that we do media training and stuff. And I can talk a little bit about that from my time when I was employed in the sport after I retired. But, I just came back and it was just a whirlwind, and my memories are really weird. It's sort of like I've almost got snapshots of photographs of the whole experience because it was just too crazy. I remember in the warm-up track at the training track in Japan, I remember I was doing a training session and all of a sudden I sort of got hugged from behind by Daley Thompson. And it was like, he was just like a mega star. I've just watched his documentary, which is really interesting. And he was kind of like, all right, Jo, you know, good luck. I see you're doing really well. You're doing amazing at the World Juniors. You know, good luck for the champ. And I was like, he knows my name.
He knows who I am.
And then I obviously got to know him over the next few years, and I've done a bit of work with him and stuff. And, you know, it was just incredible. And my parents were able to get out there, which was just meant everything, you know, that they were there sort of at the pinnacle of my career, and then managed to sort of come to the other championships that I made as well. Yeah. So that was fantastic. But yeah, a little bit sort of, I was a little bit more together with Barcelona 4 years later because I sort of knew the ropes a little bit, but it was quite a crazy time, really.
Yeah, I can't imagine as an 18-year-old being thrown into something like that.
I actually missed Freshers Week because I went to uni. It was just at the end of my, I'd been to college, and I then went on to university, and I had to miss Freshers Week because I was at the Olympics, which was kind of weird when I got back because everyone was kind of like, we've got an Olympian coming. And I was like, hi, it's just me.
Yeah.
So that was bonkers.
Yeah, and you said that you kind of had a bit of a student life, but then athlete life as well. How did you like merge the two, or was it that you kind of took a break and then got back
kind of
into
not
it?
very well for the first year. I mean, I had to have a surgery because high jump is a really, really stressful sport. It's the same, you know, you're putting your body through repetitive movement. Other sports, you know, sort of team sports and things, other events are a little bit more, you know, you're not putting your body through that amount of stress and strain. But inevitably, I did have quite a few injuries and I had to have a knee operation. So I came back, went to university, getting into student life, had a knee surgery, and I probably parked my career really for the sort of first year, kind of intentionally, but more almost a sort of reaction to sort of wanting to be a student.
Yeah.
And as I said, my first international at 15, I was now 19. You know, it was quite a serious kind of focused environment that I was in, and then suddenly moving away from home and making my own decisions. And, you know, I think it was the right time to sort of almost have a little break. Yeah. And then, you know, I qualified for the Commonwealth Games in 1990, which was in the middle of my university, and went over to New Zealand to do that. It was in Auckland. So I had some good trips, some good venues for all my champs. Yeah, but it didn't come off, and I jumped okay, but it wasn't, I wasn't really best prepared mindset-wise or physically. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, but loved going to New Zealand. Definitely one of the highlights of the places I've been.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And with, like, you said you were 15 when you first competed for GB, but when did you know, or do you think you know, that you had something special, that you could go pro with this? Was it something that you knew from a young age?
I was always, as I said, really sporty and always determined. Sort of, I was at most sports, I was sort of representing the school in the area and county at a few different sports, including sort of netball and things. So I didn't lack enthusiasm, but I seemed to be successful, and I've talked to my parents about this after, and in my career working in the sport, I was working with young athletes and sort of trying to support and the development of young athletes to senior levels. So sort of looking at my own career and looking back and talking to people who knew me back then. And my dad would always say that he knew I would be good at something. It was just sort of something in me, a spark. Now, maybe all dads say that about their kids, maybe. But
I think my dad does.
I don't know, I'll ask. But it was... I think I knew that there would be something. My dad told me years later, I was at the swimming pool and I'd always go and do dives and somersaults and things. And somebody went up to him when I was very young and said, do you know what, she could be a really good diver. And I'm kind of glad he didn't say anything to me, because I think athletics, I don't know, I'm not sure I would have lasted with all the chlorine. I think track and field was always my thing, and high jump really was always my thing, because I was very tall when I was young. I was an exceptionally tall sort of 10, 11-year-old. And so I did get put into a lot of sort of events, and high jump was one of those ones, and I was successful. I liked doing it. I was almost going to say I like winning, but I almost don't like the attention that I got from winning, but I liked winning. I liked doing it for me and performing, and then inevitably I'd win things like the English schools and things, and they'd have assemblies at school, and I'd be like, don't make me stand up, because I don't particularly like it. And I think even now I don't talk about my Olympic past very much. I mean, you know me a little bit, and it's nice to talk about it, when it's the right setting. But I think I kind of wanted to just see how much I could achieve, and it just kind of took me all the way to the Olympics. So,
that's incredible. Yeah, and I think for me anyway, I was quite intrigued of, especially now, as you said, there's social media and everything. I follow quite a few athletes on social media, and you see like little snapshots into their training regimes, or sometimes there's documentaries. But what did your, like, kind of at the height of the Olympics, when you knew you were training for it, what did your like day-to-day training regime look like? Yeah,
it's interesting, because we went to a screening the other night, and I think it was showed last night, of a British Athletics Channel 4 and National Lottery, because the National Lottery support a lot of the athletes now, or most of the athletes that go to the Olympics. And they've done a little fly-on-the-wall documentary called Path to Paris, and we watched it the other night, and it focuses in on 4 of the athletes and their sort of behind the scenes, which I think is really amazing footage to look at, and a lot of people don't realise what it is. But for high jump, you have to kind of cover everything. I mean, I don't have to do so much endurance, and you see a couple of my friends, that are going to Paris, and they're sort of the amount of training they have to do. And with high jump, it's different, because we have to be strong and powerful and fast and flexible. So there's a much more of sort of lots of different types of training that we have to do, and it's not as intense. It's not the hours and hours and the miles, but it's working really hard in the gym, working really hard on your flexibility and your mobility. I used to have to do a lot of mobility sessions, particularly around sort of hips and sort of core work for a high jump, and it's really training to make yourself robust so that you don't get injured. I mean, so much of an athlete's training is surviving the training that you need to be able to get strong enough to do the event that you want to do. So it's a lot of things, and a lot of behind the scenes, you know, a lot of hours, but I liked it because there was a lot of different things. You know, I got to do a lot of different things, but I must admit it's taken me a long time to get back into the gym because I had to do a lot of gym work.
You've done your like life's worth of gym work.
Yeah, I think yes, I've done enough of that. But I'm not that tall for a high jumper. I was tall as a kid, but then I stopped growing at about 15. So I was 5'9". I'm about 5'8" now, but you know, 174. So that's not tall for a high jumper, particularly weight. You know, 20 odd years ago when I was a high jumper, they were all sort of 6'1", 6'2". So, but then again, Jessica Ennis, you know, reset the bar because I think she's a little bit shorter than me and jumped, you know, higher than I did. So it's just sort of height, speed to power to height ratio and getting it right. Yeah. And if you can get that right, then you can jump quite high. You don't have to be really tall. Yeah.
No, that's interesting you say, because I was Googling what does it take to be an Olympian, and there were lots of different articles and replies, but some of them said it takes people 10 years of training or 10,000 hours. I was like, wow, trying to compute that in my brain of how many hours that is. And yeah, it sounds like you've really obviously did put in that work from a young age to get you up to that point. And as you say, like building that resilience in your body to not
That's
get injured.
The key, really.
Yeah.
It's to be resilient, because you often find that the athletes that perform at a major level and a senior level have strung together at least 2 or 3 years of uninterrupted performances, you know, and then you almost sort of watch and go, right, are they going to be able to, you know, last another 4 years to the next Olympics? Or in athletics, we have a 4-year cycle, obviously, with the Olympics, but we have European Championships and World Championships and Commonwealth Games. But the Europeans and the Worlds are every 2 years. So every year there is one and often two. So this year is the Europeans and the Olympics. So there's always a championship. And often that is where athletes will earn money because, you know, preparing for those championships, and if you don't compete, you don't earn money. So, and you said about turning pro, and athletics sort of, when I did it, it still had this sort of amateur sort of, you know, we don't get paid to compete. It's not like football and things like that, or tennis. You know, you get endorsements and you can get sponsorship, which you have bonuses for getting medals and things like that. So, but it relies on you competing. So if you can't compete, you can't earn money. You know, so it's and I only ever earned really enough money to fund my sport, really. So which was fine, you know, because that's what I wanted to do. I managed to get into my 30s with only ever having worked part-time jobs, because, you know, my career was my athletics, but I didn't earn enough money to make money. And I don't think you really do until you're, you know, maybe a gold medalist or a medalist at the Olympics, or maybe a double medalist. Yeah, until you're like a household name. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe now it is slightly different. It feels like there is more sponsorship or people making money on Instagram. You see endorsements of that. But I do think that's changed only in the last few years, really. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And when you, around that time, would you have had like a team around you, like a nutritionist, etc., or was it more, especially your first Olympics, was it more kind of you were not on your own, but no, I think no, you're absolutely right. I think it's sort of my coach and my family, and that was it, really. You know, it was there wasn't the sort of the team around you, the whole sort of, you know, support services, I guess, that there is now. And that is one of the most important things. I mean, it's so much easier if you have that. Yeah. And you find the right people that can work with you, or, you know, are happy to work with you, because often, you know, as I said, you don't have much funding to sort of support those people or pay for those people. Yeah. But there are obviously key areas. You know, for me, it was sort of, I only discovered really going into the Commonwealth Games in my late 20s, where I was able to sort of maybe take a little bit more control of it myself and say, right, I do need to take some time off work. I was working part-time, but I took 5 weeks off before I went to the Games. And even then, you know, there was a slight sort of amongst my colleagues. I was actually working at a newspaper, and my colleagues, and it was kind of like, oh, I might take 5 weeks off because I'm, you know, I'm going on holiday. I might take, and there was a little bit of sort of Mickey taking, you know, but it was like, no, I'm going to do this. My bosses support me in it. I saw a nutritionist. I saw a psychologist, thinking I had everything sorted, but finding that again, it's, a lot of people talk about the 1%, and it really is, if you can gain a little bit of advice or support or change the way you do things slightly, you might feel you got it all right. But I think there's never an opportunity where you get it all right. You can always learn more, get more support from somebody, find out a little advice from somebody that makes that difference. And I felt like I got that as closer to perfect as I could at the Commonwealth Games. And winning a medal was my aim, and I did. So it was sort of like, this is how I should have been doing it for the last 10 years. But I don't think it took me 10 years to get to that point, really. If somebody had said to me, well, that's what you need to do when I was 19, I probably would have gone, no, I don't need that. And I wouldn't have known where to go, really.
Yeah, I know. I think it's like you're constantly evolving, aren't you? And so you might not have known that when you were 19, but as your career went on, and I guess being around other athletes as well and seeing what they're doing, and I can't imagine what it's like when you turn up to a competition and everyone's there and you're like, do you say hello to them? Do you like...
I know. The funny thing was, and you say about learning from an athlete, it was an athlete that I met at I think it was Barcelona, who recommended a book to me, a psychology book written by I think it was a rifle or a pistol shooter, American multi-Olympic medalist. And, I've still got that book and I use that book a lot. But I didn't get that book out and read it until that point late on, when I was, sort of late 20s, trying to tick every box. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'll remember that book. Saw it on the shelf. And it was like, a light went on. It was kind of a very simple sort of techniques about mindset and positive affirmations and imagery and all of those little things, and it's nicely set out, and it's sort of it's really dog-eared now with like lots of post-it notes in it. But I read that, and it was like suddenly a load of things sort of clicked into place, and it was teaching yourself to be sort of positive and teaching yourself to have a positive mindset and not self-sabotaging, really, because a lot of people, when they get into a situation, I can't do that. And I mean, not just in sport, but sort of, in life, and sort of, I can't do that. And if you're saying you can't do it, the chances of you actually achieving the thing you want are so diminished, because if you haven't got that sort of positive mindset, which again we've talked about before, that's half the battle, or probably more than half. And I definitely found that with the Commonwealth. It was like walking out onto the track at the Commonwealth. I remember thinking, I've done everything within my power to be in the best possible shape, have the best possible mindset. And I actually said to myself, it doesn't matter what happens today. And I was kind of like, hang on, what are you saying? This is your chance to win the medal that's probably kept you going for the last 10 years of injury and sort of disappointments and stuff. And here I am at 29, 10 years after my first Olympics. This is my moment to win a medal, have something physical. Because everyone asks you at the Olympics, if you say you go to the Olympics, they always say the next question is, did you win a medal? And it's kind of like, I went to the Olympics. No, I didn't win a medal. But I won a silver medal in the Commonwealth Games. And that was my level. But I did everything possible to walk out. And as I said to myself, it doesn't matter. I'm like, it really, really doesn't matter. Yeah. Because I can put my hand on my heart and say I've done absolutely everything I needed to do, even gone after the extra support, the nutrition, the psychology. It doesn't matter. And it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. And I'm sure that's what got me my silver medal, because I believed I could do it. I'd done everything I possibly could. And I think I've always taken that on with me in my career after my sport, and even with challenges and things that you face in life. It's like, just try and tick all the boxes, and that's all you can do. And then what will be. And usually you might surprise yourself and find that actually the thing you want to achieve is what you've been working for and preparing for. It's when you're not prepared or you have the doubts that's when it creeps in. And at those moments, you don't want those doubts. You want to be everything positive.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I actually remember my head of sixth form when I was at school saying that to me during exam season, because I did used to put quite a lot of pressure on myself. And I remember her saying to me, as long as you can hand on your heart say, I've done everything that I can do for this exam, you'll be fine. And that's always stuck with me as well.
It applies to so many things.
Yeah,
so many
has.
things.
And I think it's so key, as long as you're prepared and you know that you, in your heart, you've done everything that you can, it's kind of out of your hands then, and you've just got kind of, it's almost like a peace that you can just know that you've done it.
Yeah,
and
it is, exactly. That is exactly right. You're right, that's the word. It's a sort of peace. There's almost a calm that comes over you and says, actually, now I can just go into it. But as I said, I've applied it a lot to situations in the future, so I'm grateful for that opportunity to learn from my sport. And everyone says, sport is a great microcosm of life, because you win, lose. If you get out what you put in. It was such a great. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I had in sport and what it taught me, and I've been able to use it sort of in my, like I said, in my career after sport, and then in my latest career, which came after that, really. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure with that as well, you touched on it slightly about getting injured throughout your career, and I'm sure that taught you a lot as well. How did you kind of overcome injuries that you had, or as you said before as well, like failures? I feel like they're separate but can feel quite similar. How did you overcome that to keep on pushing on to have such a long career?
I think, we talked about the determination and stuff that I sort of showed as a child. I think that was sort of a need to kind of find out what I could achieve. But I work with a couple of charities, and one of them is the Ron Pickering Memorial Fund. And Ron Pickering was a famous commentator and coach, and he was a commentator. It's his if you listen to any of the races back in the 80s, it's his voice that's iconic, and people my age remember him. But I've been a trustee of the fund for about 10-15 years, and we help young athletes overcoming barriers by raising money. But he said of me, when I was probably 15, 16, he thought I'd be the first British woman to clear 2 metres, which only happened a few years ago. And my best was 194, which was a centimetre short of the British record. But the fact that he said that about me, and he was such a respected figure and coach and commentator, I was kind of like, wow, he's seen in me something that, I could only dream of, but then I nearly achieved it, and that I suppose that sort of endorsement or that recognition is something we like to do with the charity, just little grants to athletes. Say, we've recognised that you're doing really well. We'd like to give you some money towards helping your coach or for your equipment or your travel. But that it's so important, that sort of encouragement and support and recognition, really. And I think I got a lot of that in the early days. And so I thought, wow, I could do that. I can do that. And the injuries knocked me, but there was never really a moment where I sort of thought, I'm not going to do this. And there was a lot of times when I had to go in the gym and do rehab and go and have surgery. I had 2 Achilles operations on each Achilles. I've had 2 knee operations. But, and that was somebody who probably was trying to sort of do all the right training, but maybe didn't have the right techniques and stuff in the early days. So I had to cope with those injuries. But for some reason, it wasn't ever an issue to sort of not carry on. My family, amazing support from my sisters and my mum and dad. So, again, it was easy for me, where, again, working with some of the athletes I've worked with later in my career, it's not easy for a lot of athletes. And what we can do is try and help them to overcome some of those barriers. But I think mostly it's recognition and saying somebody cares, somebody believes in you and supports you in achieving what your dream is. So I didn't want to stop until I'd at least tried to achieve my dream. No, I think that's really important to know as well, because I think obviously you've got to have that self-belief, and that would have been, I think, the start of your career, and you knew that you had that fire in you that you could do it. But even with that self-belief, I think sometimes you still do need a little bit of that external just to give you that boost and know that somebody else believes in you, or they think that you can achieve it, and you almost want to prove them right and keep going. It makes a massive difference.
It does. I think that's amazing to carry on, to have so many surgeries and have to keep pushing through and recover each time. I think it just shows that determination in you. And with then from your first Olympics to your second, do you feel that you were different then, or what was it like second time round?
Oh, it was completely different. I mean, I have much more memories of 92 because I'd been there before. I kind of knew what was going on. It wasn't a completely unfamiliar or unexpected situation to be in. And, you know, I trained for it for 2 years. I finished university. My parents were kind enough to allow me to go back home and live with them. And I had part-time jobs to fund my sport. Everything from waitressing to working in the local sports centre, work for a local photographer, and just working part-time to enable me to do the sport, to train, to keep fit, to do my rehab, to do all those things you need to do. And then I made it. And that was a much more, I think the first one was a surprise. The second one was a relief, because I did have to work quite hard and get over an injury to get selection for Barcelona. I didn't perform as well in Barcelona. I jumped the highest I'd jumped that year, but I was carrying a slight injury. So I justified my selection to go. But again, there was a tinge of, you know, this is my second Olympics. I really wanted to come here and really smash it and achieve a better result from the one 4 years before.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't jump as high. But it then left me with got to keep going, got to try and get to the next one. And I didn't. I was close to the 96 Olympics, but I didn't make it. And then it was 2 years out from the Commonwealth. And then it was sort of, by then it was 29 now. Been doing this quite a long time. This is my moment. And that was, again, looking back, Commonwealth medal was my peak. You know, I don't think I could actually ever put my hand on my heart and say that I was going to win a medal at the Olympics. So breaking the British record was probably the best result I could have ever hoped for. Getting selected again the second time, it was what I wanted to achieve that year. But it left me wanting more still. So I had to keep going.
Yeah, well, that day when you did win that silver medal, what was that like? Like, I can't imagine it, walking out onto the track. Yeah, tell us about that day.
Really hot. Really, really hot. It was in Kuala Lumpur. So 29th birthday, again, filled with a lot of sort of emotion because a lot of nerves, a lot of emotion. This is my moment kind of emotion and nerves. But as I said, you know, the preparations have gone really, really well. I did have an injury, but I worked really, really hard on my mindset to not let that get in the way of what I wanted to achieve. And I actually, with my coach then, who was one of my best friends as well, and he'd been there with me for many, many years, and we had many conversations. We worked a lot on my mindset, and we said to ourselves, I have to jump 7 jumps clean, which means first attempt. You have 3 attempts to jump each bar in high jump, and you're out when you have 3 consecutive failures. So I worked out what height I would start at. It was I think it was 6 jumps clean, and I knew I would win a medal because I knew what the other girls had jumped. The South African was there, Hestry Storbeck, who was like number 1 in the world. And I think, again, having realistic goals, I knew I wasn't going to win. But the irony was that she had a bit of a bad day, and we ended up in the penalty shootout of high jump, which is like a jump off. So it means that you get to a height where you both fail 3 times, and we were the only 2 left in, and the height was 1.92 m, and it went to 194. We were the only 2 to clear 192, which was the best I jumped for years. And it meant I'd won a medal. It meant I'd won a silver medal. And it was my 6th or 7th jump, whatever it was in my head that I'd said 7th jump, and I'd won a medal. And then we had to go again because we were going for gold then. And she failed and I failed, and she failed and I failed, and she failed and I failed. And it's like, right, you get another go at that jump. She failed, I failed. It goes down, and I think it went down, then up, then down. But it was like 10, 12 jumps. And you can actually see me, the footage I've got of the competition, and you can see me get off the mat of my 8th jump, and I start limping because I had an Achilles injury, and I had to have surgery again, you know, when I got home because it was a tear. But I'd managed to achieve it just because I was like, I'm going to do 7 jumps and I'm going to win a silver medal.
Gosh.
And I did. if I'd said gold, I might have won. But it would maybe not, because it's all about goal setting, isn't it? And, you know, we all know goals, you know, if you're setting achievable, you know, it has to be achievable. You can't set, you know, to make them meaningful, you know, smart goals and all. But, you know, they have to be realistic. And yeah, I've sort of often gone over that moment and gone, oh, you know, but she was ranked number in the world. She was her standards were way better than mine. Yeah. She jumped over 2 meters. So I couldn't have sort of gone into that with a different mindset. And here we are, how many years later? And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine as well,
just about okay
like
with that.
With each jump, you're getting more and more tired, or as you say, your Achilles starts going. If you're not expecting to have a penalty shootout of high jumps, and you've got to go another one, you must just be more and more exhausted.
It's high jump and pole vault are the two events in track and field where you have to achieve your best when you're most tired. Yeah. Because, you know, you have to get the results, and then it could be 2-3 hours you're out there, really, really hot. And I remember being interviewed afterwards, and I'm just like sweaty and hot and, you know, very happy. Yeah. But yeah, it is hard, you know, and that's that mental toughness to come through sort of 3 hours being out there and little bursts of energy, as opposed to sort of the track events where it might be, you know, under 10 seconds on the 100 meters, or, you know, the longer events, but it's a different kind of psychology. Yeah,
sure. And I think that kind of brings you on nicely to my next question, because I mentioned at the beginning that only 1 in 500,000 people can say that they are an Olympian, which is just a crazy stat, I think. But what do you think makes you that 0.0001% of people? What does it take to be an Olympian?
I think it's so many factors, but I think it has to come down. I mean, it has to come down to talent. You have to have. I mean, again, depending on the sport, but, you know, there are lots of events where I know I could never be no matter how much I wanted it. You probably think the same. It's kind of like, oh, I'd love to do that, but I could never do that. You know, so you have to have an element of natural talent. But then it is work, it is hard work, it is mindset. You've got to really want it, you've got to be determined. It's not enough that your family or your parents or your coach or your teacher wants it for you, because eventually you get to a stage where it is you on your own making your own decisions. And it's, you know, that's when you know that you really want it, if, you know, you keep going. And a bit of luck. I mean, unfortunately, like I said, there's still a bit of luck involved with being at the right school, getting the right facilities, the right coaching. And, you know, lottery funding has come in, and it's helping a lot of athletes achieve being able to travel to get to the right coach. But there is still luck involved. You know, I still put mine down to having incredibly supportive parents and family, going to the right school and having a supportive PE teacher, you know, them celebrating my success, which probably in a small way, even though it cringed me out sometimes in assemblies, I enjoyed it because I was winning and I was successful. But I think it is a combination of things. And and believe me, I've in my working life after athletics, working with young athletes, me and colleagues and everyone, we've gone, what is the golden nugget that you need, that you could look at a 15-year-old and go, they're the one. Yeah. Because ultimately it comes down to funding, and you really want to be able to figure out what that thing is. You can't. Yeah. You can't. It's just trying to support them in all of the areas that you can, encourage them. I mean, so many people have done it in different ways. Like, I remember there was a really good Swedish heptathlete called Carolina Kluft, and she was an exceptionally good junior and then went on to senior level. But she didn't have a really long career, but she did, I'm pretty sure she went up to gold medal at the Olympics. And her strategy, or her club's strategy, was to support all the people around her friends. So rather than pile pressure on her and say she was the one, they actually approached all the parents of her peers and her friends at the club and said, can we make sure that you guys all come to training? Because if you come to training, she'll come to training and she'll enjoy it and she'll love it, and she'll do the early years without the pressure, because they could all see she was going to be amazing. So again, it's sort of having people around
That
you that
village
can
around
maybe
you.
identify that. And everyone's different. Everyone needs different things. Everyone's motivated by different things. So I think it's just tapping into that motivation and having that goal that you just, it's all about that goal and doing what you can to put yourself in the right place to achieve that goal.
I think the mindset thing is so true as well.
Huge.
And I've mentioned to you that I've been loving the new documentary on Netflix called Sprint about the athletes that are going to be in the Olympics this year, and it's their whole backstory and the nationals and the worlds and all of that. And there was one part in it where one of the coaches said, every single person standing next to you here has done exactly the same amount of training as you. It's now all about your mind. And I thought that was so powerful because it's true. If you're in the top 10 of the 100 metres, everyone there has put in the hours. They've put probably more than those 10,000 hours. And it's how you can control that mindset walking out into that stadium, visualising that finish line, those sorts of things. And I just thought that was really powerful.
It is. It's like you said, it's how much, who wants it? You've heard people say who wants it the most. I'm sure they all want it, but whatever that little thing is. And the documentary that I was telling you about earlier, the Path to Paris.
Yeah,
there's
I'm definitely
a lot
going to watch that one.
Back stories in that, and I think it's Josh Kerr who's one of our big chances for gold in Paris in the 1500, and he says they actually call it's the Path to Paris hunt for gold, and he talks about you're hunting it. It's like we're warriors, and you know, I know other athletes who, you know, they're not that sort of aggressive, but they find a way to change their mindset or focus their mindset on that goal. But it does. If you make a final at a major championships, everyone wants it and everyone can win it. And particularly sort of in the middle distance events, which I find the most interesting because, you know, literally if you're in the final, because there's tactics involved. I think nobody would have argued that Usain Bolt was going to win the 100 if he was in it. But, you know, when the standards are all so close, it's literally anyone's gold. And all the athletes in that documentary, it's all about gold. It's not about a medal. You know, it's they've now got their sights set on gold, and it's going to be really exciting. Yeah, no, it was so. I just found it fascinating, and to see, like, as when they turn up to these events, and they're all silent, not really speaking to each other because you just see their focus, and it's your competition, right? And then once they've crossed the finish line and they're hugging, they're congratulating each other. But there was also one really powerful moment as well where I can't remember which athlete it was, but she was going for the world record or the all-time record, and she didn't get it, but she had won gold. But she crosses the finish line, wins gold, and you just see it's just pure disappointment in her face because that's what she was going for, like the all-time world record. And I just thought, wow, that is whole package.
That is amazing. She's won gold and she's beat all of these other incredible female athletes, but it just still wasn't the one thing she was going for. It was a really interesting documentary. I'd recommend it if anyone hasn't watched it.
I've said I've watched a bit of it, but I'm definitely going to watch that because I think Dina Asher Smith is in that, who's an athlete I know really well. And, you know, she's obviously going to be in Paris. I've known her, you know, since she was about 15, and I've known, so I worked in athletics afterwards, but her and Jake Whiteman and a lot of those athletes who are now competing and are going for those medals, Matt Hudson Smith, you know, it's so lovely to see their progression and sort of hear them talking and seeing they've gone through that journey, and they're now not kids who are really good, they're contenders, you know, and it's just like, too excited to see Paris.
I was going to ask you that. What are you most looking forward to in Paris? But I guess it's the people that you have an affiliation with. And definitely,
I mean, I know a lot of the parents as well, and I know, you know, they're going to be there. Like, you know, Jake Whiteman, Dina Asher Smith, their parents came to my husband's wedding, you know, so I've known them and their families because a lot of the work I did after I finished was for British Athletics, working with the talent athletes and trying to support their transition from junior to senior. So to see some of these guys come forward and they're there now at the very peak. You know, Laura Muir, Molly Caudry, I used to team manage the junior teams, and they've all come through that system. And a lot of the 4x1, 4x4 relay runners, and they're all coming. I was at the Diamond League at the weekend, I was telling you, and just seeing them compete, and they're all starting to sort of peak at the right time. And it's just it's just going to be so exciting. And yeah, it's really, really lovely to see them reaching what they've probably been thinking about and talking about since they were 15. So a similar path to me, but they're there. They've got gold in their sights.
Well, that must feel really special to be a part of that cog in the work that you did after your career, and to now see them going up there. It must feel really amazing.
It's really satisfying. It's very nerve-wracking as well. At the weekend I was just hoping nobody got an injury or something. I was kind of like, it's really too close to Paris.
Please be careful.
Wrap yourself in cotton wool. But yes, it's amazing and so proud of what they're doing, but just sort of generally it's just exciting to see them achieving their dreams.
Yeah.
Because as you said, not many people can do that, and there's a very small percentage of people that actually can get to that level.
Exactly.
And making that Olympic team is, I guess it is the pinnacle, and then performing, at that games. It's going to be great.
Exactly. And I think, obviously, you're a female athlete yourself, but something we spoke about a little bit before we started recording was I saw yesterday, it was kind of trending on Instagram, that this will be the first Olympics ever where it's a 50% split between male and female athletes. It's the first time ever that it's going to be equal, and it's like groundbreaking that it's equal, because actually the year that you competed in Barcelona, there were only 28.9% female athletes. So you were included in that, and now it's up to 50%. And the first ever Olympics, which was also in Paris, there was only 2.2% of female athletes, which is crazy to think that almost 98% of the athletes at the time were male, and now for the first time ever it's equal. And I just wanted to ask a little bit about maybe your own experience, or then with your career after working with British athletics, if there were any differences between kind of the male and female, or the support that you got as a female athlete.
I mean, way back when I first started, I'm sort of talking sort of, when I was sort of under 20, or around my early 20s, there was a difference in the sense of the way the sport is structured. So we had a women's amateur athletics association and a men's, and it was things like, we'd both go, me and a male colleague or peer would go and compete at championships, and I would be paid 10 pence a mile for my petrol to get there, and he would be paid 20 pence a mile. And it was kind of like almost a standing joke, that there just wasn't as much money in female sport. But I think generally, apart from that, in athletics, and yes, it's taken a while, but in the early days, and I can remember when pole vault came in and triple jump came in, and I think 10,000 metres for women and steeplechase, because they didn't let women do that. And that's even in my memory. So, I can remember that well. So there weren't the opportunities to compete for women. So it's no surprise that there weren't as many women on the team. However, we're now in track and field, and I suspect in most other sports, there are equal opportunities for women to compete in the same events. But in athletics, it's always been pretty inclusive, male and female. I've never felt I've missed out on anything, and I know this isn't the same in other sports, but I've never really felt that I've missed out on anything in terms of opportunity or selection because of my gender. So, I'm lucky in that respect, and athletics is such a great sport for, there's an event for everybody, male and female, so it wasn't something really that sort of affected me, but it is good to see, other sports like the tennis and football we were talking about earlier, and things where it is now starting to be equal pay and things like that. But in athletics, it's sort of you're ranked, and we've been, the females in the sport in Britain have been smashing it, for the last few years particularly. It seems to be we're winning. I haven't looked at the stats like you, but, it seems to be we're winning a lot more female medals, thinking back to my first Olympics, back in the day, Tessa Sanderson and Fatima Whitbread in the javelin, and you had, Denise Lewis, followed up by Jess Ennis and Laura Muir, and, sort of all of the Dina winning medals and stuff. And it's sort of like there seems to be a lot of females relays, there's a lot of female athletes and a lot of females in Paris, with Molly Caudry in the pole vault. And as we've spoken about, some of the other girls sort of on the track in the middle distance, Keely Hodgkinson and the girls in the middle distance just did world-leading times at the weekend. 4x4 women's relay set a world-leading time, so the girls are going to be good to watch.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like you said, opportunities and stuff, I've been in a sport which has been pretty equal.
That's really good to hear. And I think you've obviously been part of that as well, pushing that forward. You were part of that 28%, pushing those numbers forward. So I think that's really important that you were there and also that you felt that opportunities were there. And in terms of then going forwards with the rest of your life, do you think you've carried that mindset with you and that determination through from your retirement? Obviously you came to the end of your career as an athlete, kind of that transition, and how did you take that forward?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, it's lots of little messages, little learned facts and lots of little experiences that you pick up along the way, and you sort of kind of, I guess it's sort of in me, and I don't sort of pull something out at the right time. It's just sort of, I find myself coping with the situation, and I sort of think, I think it's my background as an athlete, or my determination, or my mindset, or whatever it is, that has definitely helped me in that respect. But and interesting, because we have spoken about this, our shared love of marathons.
Yeah.
Because that's how we met.
Yeah.
In the first, when you ran it, the London Marathon, a couple of years ago. And then I did this year for the charity that I'm a trustee of, with the intention of just running it once. And then it didn't kind of go to plan on the day. And I realised that I had sort of approached my training in a very similar, albeit scaled down way, but, in terms of getting my nutrition right. And we talked lots of times, and I gained a lot of advice from you because you'd been there and done it, and gave me sort of a lot of tips and confidence to know that I could do it. But because I didn't sort of achieve what I wanted to at London, I crossed the line and I said to my husband, I'm going to have to do another one just to see what I can achieve. So I actually roped him in, and he has done a couple of four or five marathons already, and he was doing all the long training runs with me. But we realised Milton Keynes Marathon was 15 days later, so we entered that and ran it together. And I did achieve the time, which isn't great, but I did achieve the time.
It was great.
It was under 5 hours.
Yeah, it was amazing.
But I mean, I'd aimed for about 4.5, 4:40, and I ran just under 4:40. So it was quicker than London. And London was amazing because I ran it with a friend, and we had just such an amazing time. And everyone says the crowds, the crowds are phenomenal. And I'm immensely grateful that I had the opportunity to run that for my charity, spurred on by him. And he was running for prostate cancer. And as you know, my dad passed away from prostate cancer in March. So it was a very emotional kind of thing to do.
Yeah.
But there was still the sort of competitor in me
There was that
went,
drive in you.
And people are like, oh, you've got the marathon bug now. I'm like, no, I haven't. I just had unfinished business.
Yeah.
I just had to give it another go and see what I could do. And now that's done.
Yeah. Well, when you told me that, I thought that was so interesting, because I think it just shows that's how you were the whole time through your professional career as an athlete, that you just knew that you hadn't quite got it yet, and you kept pushing and you kept pushing. And then years later with the marathon, you did exactly the same thing. You just hadn't quite got what you wanted, and you went again. And I thought that was a real credit to you to still have that.
It's really
drive.
annoying.
It's annoying, but it's amazing, because now, because then you ran 2 marathons in just over 2 weeks.
And it was really hard.
Yeah.
But one of the hardest things I've ever done. But
Yeah.
To do it with my husband there, my mum came and my sister, and they were there watching. So that was really nice. It was very sort of 2 very different sort of events 2 weeks apart, but really lucky. And I genuinely wasn't sure whether I'd survive the training, and that's a lot of the things we talked about, was getting all the little things right, and sort of making sure everything was sort of as good as it could be for the marathon, as prepared as you could be. But looking back, I did a pretty good job of that, and that was definitely the athlete in me, and it sort of was just came out. It's sort of totally different event. I mean, my run up was 9 strides. A marathon, a lot more. So, it was very much out of my comfort zone, but probably why I wanted to do it, really. Just something to see if I could, and raise some money, which was fantastic.
Exactly. Well, Jo, we're sadly coming to the end. I feel like I could ask you a million questions about the Olympics. I find it so interesting, especially at this time of the year, with it just starting in a couple of days. But in terms of looking back at your life, if you could go back to the beginning of your 20s, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
I do Pilates. No, I mean, stretching and Pilates, yes, start doing that as early as you can. But seriously, it comes back down to positivity and mindset and surrounding yourself with people that will get the best out of you. I think that would be my advice, I think in your 20s you're so still trying to find your way, and I really was, and probably been influenced by people to do things that maybe looking back I probably shouldn't have done, or would have done differently. You know, I don't regret anything I did, and it got me to where I was to win my Commonwealth silver, but I think positivity, you know, sort of in everything you do, sort of exuding positivity, encouraging it in others. It's not exactly sort of fake it till you make it, but it's almost sort of like, I learned a lot from the book that I read and the research that I did later on in my career towards the Commonwealths. And it was all about, even if you don't feel good, tell people you feel good. If somebody asks how you are, I feel great. You know, so that would be my advice, would be sort of trust yourself and trust the people around you that are the team you want to be around you, and have a positive mindset, and you can achieve great things.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Jo. And just on a personal note, you helped me so much with my marathons, especially the first one. I would not have got through it without you. I first started seeing Jo to have sports massages, and her knowledge and everything was so helpful. So thank you so much from me as well.
Well, thank you. It's been great.
Thank you, Jo. What a great episode. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please continue to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on socials. See you next week for another episode.